Man, I still love that video.
It's so good.
I'm still not tired of it.
Never gets old.
Every time.
God, and I can't wait to add something new. We don't have anything Harbaugh there. We're gonna have to do something. Hey everybody, Garrett, Jamie, Craig, the trio is here. We're all back. Thank you for bearing with us. I know the schedule's been up and down. Some of us have been here, not been here, but today you got all of us. Garrett, Craig, Jamie, we are all here. We are here for TLR Roundtable. We will take your Discord questions. We got Twitter questions. We got bad tweets. And then if you guys got anything in the chat, we will definitely answer those too. So make sure to get your questions in. We will answer those at some point, probably in the middle here. But send any questions you got. I know it's a big matchup this weekend, playing the Bengals in prime time. So I'm sure you guys got a lot of stuff you guys want to ask, and we will be happy to answer anything. So with that said, I think we're about ready if you guys are.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right. We'll start with our first Discord question. Craig, sorry. Craig, first one.
That's all good. This is from Ferguson 1015. So he or she, can't really tell by the picture. It's super small on the screen. But either way.
It's a cat.
Okay. Oh, still.
It's not even a person.
Whichever he or she, don't want to discriminate either way.
Yeah, identifies as a cat.
There you go. That much we know. Balance is always important. But if you have to choose one for this game, would you rather the Chargers have an average passing attack and dominant rushing attack, or a dominant passing attack and average rushing attack? So I'll throw this one to you, Jamie. What do you think?
I'm going to say dominant rushing attack and average passing attack, because I feel like, and I talked about this on the walkthrough this week, I think limiting the number of possessions that the Bengals have is going to be extremely important. I think the Chargers need to possess the ball for a minimum of 35 minutes in this game in order to win it. Otherwise, you're just giving the Bengals the ball too many times. So for me, I think they need to be able to run the ball effectively, pick up chunks, bleed the clock, and really make the most of their time of possession by moving the ball down the field and scoring touchdowns. So for me, it's a dominant rushing attack and an average passing attack. I don't think they need to be dominant, as we've seen in the passing attack, to win. I think you want Herbert to make 5-6 plays in the passing game in key moments. But other than that, you want to be able to bludgeon the Bengals defense and run the ball down their throat.
Yeah, that feels like the best way to go. If you got to choose either or. Because if I'd like a dominant both passing attack and rushing attack, but
greedy.
Maybe I'm just too greedy. But if you do get a dominant rushing attack on Sunday night, then you're attacking one of their strongest part of their defense, which their defense is not very good, but their corners are really bad. I mean, they gave up 115 yards to a thing called a Tylan Wallace. Which I've never heard of. So even with an average passing attack, you can get a lot through the air. So to be able to get whatever you want on the ground and having a dominant rushing attack, you not only control the clock, you're then beating up I don't want to call it the better part of their defense, but I guess the thing that's a little bit better than everything else, then you're doing pretty good. I think the dominant rushing attack is the answer here.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and tie this off with a bow. We're all on the same page. So dominant run game first. Also, this is provided your drives end in sixes more often than they do threes against this type of offense as well. So use that as a caveat. You definitely want to control the clock and avoid a shootout against this team if possible. I've seen a lot of people really excited for the potential of going back and forth between Herbert and Joe Burrow. I'm not interested in that just because the Bengals are a little bit more equipped to do it, especially now since it looks like T. Higgins is going to play. So you probably want to stay away from that game. They're, built to play that style of offense where the Chargers definitely want to bludgeon you on the ground. This also, gives your defense a break, and it'll keep your front fresh to rush Burrow on those obvious passing downs. So there are a lot of reasons why you would probably want to lean more so to a dominant running game in this type of game against this level of opponent. You just don't want to end up in a situation where you're going back and forth and trading scores, again, because it can wear your defense down. And also they just have more, I guess you want to call them viable reliable weapons for Burrow to get the ball to. Even though the Chargers offense is starting to ascend, I'm not willing to take that chance just yet.
No, you don't want to get in a shootout. You want to drag the pace of the game down. Like I said, limit the possessions. I think if you can keep them to fewer than 9 possessions for the entirety of the game, you're in really good shape. And then if you add to that possessing the ball for 35 minutes or more, I think the Chargers are looking really good. And that also sets up the play action pass, which opens up big windows and hopefully creates some explosive plays.
They got a shootout last week. They meaning the Bengals with the Ravens. Ravens win by a point, and you had Jamar Chase for like 264 and 3 touchdowns. I don't want to see that.
No,
I mean, you might think that's cute, but I don't want to see that. I want to see them run the ball and take away as much possession and as much clock as they possibly can away from Burrow.
Yeah, this is being built up as a Burrow versus Herbert game, but I don't think it necessarily plays out that way. I think if you got Burrow throwing the ball all over the yard, that's what you expect. But if Herbert comes out there and, like Jamie mentions, makes a couple of big plays, which he has been doing throughout the season, then to me, it's not about how many passing yards Burrow or Herbert has, towards the end of the game. It's about who made the most efficient and effective plays and helped lead their team to victory. So the Chargers have their style. They should stick with it and not try to match that Bengals energy, because I don't think it'll turn out well.
Before we go to the next question, Case Hen says, I'm here, but I'm driving. Bolt up. Do us a favor. Get out of the chat. Keep your eyes on the road.
Both hands.
Listen, bro. You can
10 and 2. 10 and 2.
10 and 2. Keep driving, all right? Keep listening, but stop. Get out of the chat. Question number 2 here from Dan Mack, friend of the show. I have a question. What do you think is the thought process behind taking the Gus Bus off the field in short yardage and goal-to-go situations? They seem to prefer Haskins. Just a freshness thing? Versus Titans, Gus was having a lot of success, but they still switched him out a lot. Craig, what's going on?
I wouldn't glean too much on that. I say they probably had Gus on a bit of a snap count, being that it was his first game back since like week 4. I don't see this being the norm as the season wears on either. But if you want to keep this into account for later on down the line, particularly after the season ends, Haskins is also a power back. So maybe even Gus's successor after this year, potentially. So he's capable in those short yardage situations. As you saw, he did score inside the goal. Inside in the red zone. But I don't put too much stock in him being a replacement for Gus or taking some of those short yardage carries. I think they're just trying to give Gus an opportunity to work his way back into game shape, and it was probably due to snap count. So don't put too much stock in what you saw. If you see this in the next 2 to 3 weeks, then yeah, maybe there's some questions to be asked, but I'm not worried about it too much. Gus is going to get his run as the season wears on.
Yeah, I think it had a lot to do with Gus, it being his first game back and just trying to ease him in. Also, it really seems like Harbaugh likes to get his guys their flowers, so to speak, and Haskins has been his guy since college, and that was his first NFL touchdown in a game where it put them up by three scores. It just felt like it was kind of a throwaway, like this game's over. Let's give the ball to Hassan and get the ball in the end zone. I don't think that's something that'll carry forward, although it seems like they've been hunting for that first touchdown for a few weeks, because that's not the first time we've seen that. But
yeah,
I personally, I would rather not see Haskins get the ball in the red zone ever. But maybe they were just hunting for that first touchdown so they could say they got it for him. And hopefully over the next few weeks, you see more and more of Gus in that role moving forward.
I absolutely hate and feel like screaming and somehow reaching into my television and shaking Harbaugh when he's got Matlock and Haskins in the backfield paired up, ready to dive. I absolutely hate it. It worked on a 4th and short earlier in the season, and last weekend
barely,
by the way. Barely. Then barely this time. Barely got the nose of the football across the goal line as he's diving over the pile. But not only was he giving his guys his flowers, it was also like, hey, exclamation point. This is the team that cut you. We can give you a little, extra revenge type thing on top of that. But maybe that had a lot to do with it too, or some of it. But I don't like Haskins like at all. I mean, there's like 3 other running backs on that roster that you give that ball to. and Haskins isn't one of them. So I don't really like that. But what do you got? And yeah, I think also to Craig's point, the fact that they're starting to work Gus back in, I don't know that they want him going in a dive on a goal to go situation with kind of the game already out of hand at that point. So I don't know that they wanted to work that in his first game back. So I'm okay with that. And I wouldn't read too much into it either. But what do you guys feel like? Because it does feel like, and I know Gus has been out, but J.K. Dobbins is getting a lot of the goal line work, even when Gus was in. Granted, he's found a lot of success with it, but we kind of felt like it was the opposite, and probably should be the opposite. But hopefully, things will start working themselves out once Gus gets a little bit more healthy.
Well, they still need to find that balance, right? So this is Gus's first game back. I'm sure they were looking to get a little bit of a flow. They were taking turns. It looked like they were kind of taking different drives, but Gus was definitely looking like the old Gus Edwards in this game for certain.
Yeah.
I don't feel like, and again, getting in game shape is a completely different scenario. So 10 carries for 55 yards. So he was at 5.5 a clip. He looked just fine against a really good interior defensive line. And I think it'll be better for him moving forward if they do work him more into it week by week. I think it was an ankle injury he was dealing with. So just allowing him to absorb that contact, get back in game form. And he'll probably be in a really good groove with JK, and he'll probably also take over more of those goal line carries as well. But I have a feeling that it's going to be more so that hot hand thing. But, when they get inside of the 5, I don't necessarily think they'll sub JK out for Gus. It'll just be however things are going. But once you get on the goal line, whoever is the guy that has the hot hand probably is going to get the carries. But I get what everyone's saying. But again, no disrespect to Haskins. He is a short yardage back, so I understand why they put him in for that particular play. It's kind of what he's always done. But, I get it. You want revenge on the Titans. Cool. It's all good. I mean, the game was pretty much out of hand. So what was there to lose at that point?
And it was on second down. It wasn't like their third and goal or fourth and goal to go type situation. They were still early in that goal line situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roman's been saying they've got stuff lined up that they haven't run yet. I wouldn't be surprised if that involves more of Gus and JK on the field together in those red zone situations. So I think that stuff will all work itself out.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, it just really felt like a feel-good thing for Haskins.
Yeah.
The team that cut him, first NFL touchdown in a game that's pretty much over as it is. It just felt like it was too easy to try to get him that rep.
I'll tell you what didn't feel good about, and I know we don't care about fantasy, but I am playing fantasy, and I have J.K. Dobbins, and I got vultured because on the play just before, he got the ball to the 2-yard line, and then they subbed him out. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But whatever. I wasn't winning that matchup anyway, so it was just, didn't matter.
It's always your team first and then fantasy, Craig. You know the rules.
Exactly.
And also a thing that I was thinking on that drive, and probably something that might be coming here pretty soon, is with those two lined up in the backfield, when you got Haskins and Matlock behind Herbert, who's under center, I would not be surprised to see that same look, but with kind of more of a tush push coming on that goal to go situation where you got two of those bodies moving forward, getting Herbert in the end zone.
Yep.
Where they're thinking it's going to be another dive to Haskins or something. I got a feeling that's coming.
I could see that.
Yeah. All right. Jamie, give us our third Discord question.
Do you think they bring Mac back next season and let Joey go? Also, if they let Joey go, would Edge be the pick in round 1 in the next draft? Wow, it's early to start talking about the draft.
Yeah. I know. We should be talking about playoffs.
Yeah.
This isn't Chargers seasons past here, by the way. They're 6-3, not the inverse. So let's pump the brake on draft talk.
This is
Garrett,
trauma, Craig. This is years of trauma.
Yeah, we're scarred.
PTSD.
Yeah.
CPSD, Chargers PTSD.
Yeah. I think that seeing both Mac back before Joey is probably in the cards. Bosa does have another year on his deal, but he's going to be making $36 million. He's got the potential out. Mac is a free agent after this year, but I could see Mac coming back. it feels like Joey Bosa would really, really have to start ramping it up here to even consider keeping that $36 million cap hit, even with the cap space the Chargers do have. But we've kind of alluded to it and hinted at it, and I feel like, this is kind of Bosa's last year, at least last year in the NFL. The injuries just feel like they're piling up. You hear him talk about the injuries, and it feels like not only it's hurting his game, but it's also just feels like a source of frustration to him personally. You could just tell that he's kind of beaten down by constantly having to go to the sideline, not being able to get over these injuries. They're lingering throughout the year. So my guess is Mac resigns. I think Bosa's out next season, but because Mac's still playing at a high level, I feel like he might do that the Jadeveon Clowney type role path where every year he signs a new contract, sees that he still has it, signs another contract, and just kind of gets all that money from those 1-year deals, if not a 1 or 2 year deal with the Chargers. But if they do bring back Mac, they've got Thule. That to me feels like a little rich to be taking an edge round 1. I get Mac will need to be replaced soon, but I don't know that 2025 is a first round edge in my mind this early in the season, without seeing free agency and all that other stuff.
What do you think, Craig?
I was going to say, I mean, whether this ends up being his last season in the NFL or not, I do believe it is definitely his last hurrah with the Chargers. So for me, it's easy. Khalil Mack, especially if he's playing at a relatively high level as the season wears on, I think you have to value him more than Bosa. I mean, of course, Khalil Mack will be 34 years old, but he may still offer you more at that age in production and availability than a 30-year-old Joey Bosa. I know how crazy that sounds, but it's playing out that way. But to be honest, the edge situation is going to probably be a hot topic come this offseason, even if Mac does return and then Joey's gone, because you get a little light and you start looking at some of those contracts and who's going to be a free agent going into next season. So I'm not going to take edge off of the table completely in the first round. It just depends on where they finish for the year. And I haven't started any draft stuff, so I couldn't tell you who's what right now. So, good. But I wouldn't completely take edge off of the table. It just depends on positioning. And also, we don't know what the plan's going to be in the offseason with the amount of picks they're going to have. Those comp picks taken into consideration, they might maneuver some things. They could sign someone in free agency. You never know. So, but again, that's way down the line. We're focusing on playoffs right now.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I've been saying for 2 years that I thought Joey was on the way out the door, and I still think that's the case. Just looking at the numbers, he's going to make $36 million next year. I think that's his cap number.
Yep.
But they can save 25 of that if they cut him, and you wind up eating 11 million. That's a pretty easy decision to make for a guy who's never healthy. So for me, I think if you're going to bring one of those two back, it's Mac. With the money they're going to have to spend, it wouldn't surprise me if they let both go and go try to sign a younger edge rusher. There's some guys out there in free agency who could be interesting. Josh Sweat is a free agent, and he's looking really good for the Giants right now. I think he's with the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's with the Eagles. Sorry.
Oh, different. Sorry. I'm thinking about the guy from the Panthers, not Sweat, the one that just got traded to the Giants this offseason.
But
Burns
is the guy I was thinking of. Yeah. But yeah, there are some guys they could sign to come in and probably make a pretty big difference on the edge. So I don't necessarily think you have to bring both of them back, but if you're going to bring both of them back, I would say it's probably Mac on a 1-year deal.
Doesn't Mac feel like a Chargers linchpin at this point? Like he feels ingrained in, the team. They look at him as a leader in the actual culture. Exactly. Even though he wasn't a part of, the new regime, it's probably the one thing Brandon Staley did right. And it's the one gift that he left us. So, it feels almost like he wasn't drafted a Charger, but I wouldn't be surprised if he retired one.
Yeah. There is kind of another side of this, which, is pretty true from Dicker the Kicker in the chat says. I haven't seen Joey this happy in a while. It does feel like every Sunday in that locker room, in those videos, he does seem a little bit more energetic. So it feels like Harbaugh could be that type of guy that might, light that spark for maybe a year or two, if possible. But again, those injuries, you can just tell how frustrated he is because of those injuries. And at some point, he's just got to let it go.
He can be as happy as he wants to be. Can he play?
Yeah, right. Okay, Craig.
Yeah.
You got the next one here.
What's up, Serge? Thanks
You're
for the
up.
question. Oh, sorry, 21 Deeks. We did Serge already. Got ahead of myself. All right, so based on what we've seen so far, what do you think the ceiling of this team is? Is a playoff win a possibility? Let's start with you on this one, Garrett.
I mean, I think a playoff win is definitely a possibility. We've talked about how much we've wanted a team that has the run game to dominate a clock, control a game, and win them a game late. And we've seen flashes of that this season. And that's a team built to win in the playoffs. A team who can dominate or even like steal a win when they're not favored because they control the clock and keep the ball out of the team's hands. I think it's a high possibility that they can get a playoff win with the way they're playing. I do want to say, and I haven't been here for a while. I mean, at least a couple last podcasts, but it just feels like this team, since coming off the bye, has not only found an identity, but is start to build off of all of that. Like we saw after the bye, Roman let Herbert operate a little bit more, got away from the running game a little bit less. And then now we're seeing Herbert use his legs and be a dual threat with the ball in his hands. And defensively, it was about limiting mistakes. But since the bye, they're getting more turnovers. The pass rushes come alive. Like it feels like the trajectory so far since the bye has been so nice and steady. And it's been climbing with each game so far that the ceiling seems pretty high. But it does also feel like the next 5 games are going to tell us a lot. Is it a level of competition type deal where you're dominating the ones who aren't very good, or are they actually the real deal and they're contenders? So I think we're going to learn a lot more in these next 5 games, but I feel like the ceiling is high and moving in the right direction, and I think a playoff win is absolutely a possibility.
What would you say, Jamie?
I would say a playoff win is definitely a very strong possibility. Depending on where you wind up being seated, I could see maybe as many as 2 playoff wins. I think, if you're kind of looking at the playoff field right now, I feel like there are a lot of AFC teams that, while they have good records, are vulnerable for a variety of reasons. I would feel pretty confident that they could go in and beat the Texans, even though the Texans are really good. I think they can beat the Steelers healthy, especially with a healthy Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
I was really nervous, really worried about the Ravens. And while their offense is phenomenal and Lamar is playing really, really good football right now, their defense is trash. And it's really hard to win in the playoffs with a defense that is that epically bad.
Yeah.
So there are so many teams in the AFC right now that I feel like the Chargers can beat if they fall in if they're in that like 5, 6, 7 seed range. You just want to avoid playing the Chiefs early. If you can fall into an area where you don't see the Chiefs maybe until the AFC Championship game, then you're feeling pretty good. Buffalo would worry me, and the Chiefs would worry me early in the playoffs. And that's really about it.
Yeah, those feel like the real contenders, those two. Buffalo, Kansas City feels like the next year's Chargers, and then it's, a bunch of unknowns and question marks. I mean, the Broncos are a 7 seed right now. So,
yeah, I don't think that they've peaked, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made it into the divisional round. If they reeled off a couple of wins and definitely made it to that point, then you could say they're probably hot on the run. And then, in my opinion, all bets are off. The great equalizer for this team is the defense. So if you think about some of those really good offenses, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with the Bengals. We'll see, kind of what happens throughout the remainder of the year, specifically after Sunday. But when you're talking about like the Chiefs, the Bills, some of those better offenses, the Chargers defense, I think, actually lowers the ceiling on some of those offenses. So you're going to be playing closer games than if they were playing other teams with lesser defenses. So as the offense ascends, I think the defense holds steady. And then if they can get into a divisional round, again, like I mentioned before, all bets are off at that point. And I'm not saying that it's a guaranteed Super Bowl run, but as the offense does continue to grow, I don't see the defense falling off a cliff. And as long as guys stay healthy, I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Garrett was saying about the team kind of starting to peak and it feels like they're finding their identity and figuring things out, I think watching them the last few weeks, it really feels like they're figuring out who they are in terms of play calling and things like that on offense and on defense. They're playing complementary football. They're getting big plays out of all three phases of the game. But the big thing for me that we're not used to seeing from the Chargers, particularly from the Chargers coaching staff, is the coaches are figuring personnel issues out on the fly and making good decisions doing it. Like they're actually having competitions at certain positions during the games, and they're evaluating players during the season. And that's just not something the Chargers have done. So making those kinds of adjustments are, I think, huge because it really speaks to their ability to continue making those adjustments to and through the playoffs. But I mean, seeing Salyer and Sarel out there last week, quote unquote, competing at right guard.
Yeah.
And then Sarel's off the field after one series, and it's like, okay, the offensive line is good again because that interior looked really bad with Sarel out there in my opinion. But Salyer played extremely well. To me, I think he was better. Limited sample size being what it is, I think he was better than Pipkins has been really at any point so far this season. And it just seemed like they shored up a lot of those leaks with Salyer in there. So seeing them make those personnel adjustments is really encouraging because it just gives you the sense that they're going to figure it out and they're going to put the right people in the right situations. And that's just it's not the Charger way.
Well, speaking to competition in game, that's one thing to keep a lookout for on Sunday, Salyer versus Pipkins, because I know that Pipkins is back. He was in practice. I think he was taking his first team reps again. But if he goes out there and he starts to stink it up, I would not be surprised to see Salyer in there. Maybe he gets a little bit of a rope to go out there and see how well he can perform. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if they, keep a short leash on him if he's not performing up to par. And Salyer performed quite admirably last week. Jamie and I talked about it. He did have, I think, Jamie, you were a little bit higher on the overall performance than I was, but I think he did play very well, specifically since they were running the ball as well as they were. And I do think overall he's probably a better run blocker than Pipkins is, just naturally because of his build and being stronger in his lower half and able to drive guys off the ball, where Pipkins might be a more athletic player. So again, keep an eye on that on Sunday because there's a very good chance Salyer could end up ending the game as opposed to Pipkins, who's probably going to start it.
Yeah, watching it live, I thought Salyer got injured, but then after the game saying, "Oh no, we wanted to see who was better," and then going with the player who was better, it was pretty amazing because not something we're used to. Like Kevin said, the old regime would hand out blank checks for 4+ years, let them roll, and then figure it out in free agency.
They would talk about competition, but not actually encourage it.
Never. I want to just bring up maybe the hottest take I've ever seen in our chat. Christ may have peaked too early. This is obviously a mistake because he meant Chiefs, but maybe the best autocorrect I've ever seen in my life.
I saw that, but I was staying far, far away from it. I wanted no parts of that.
May have peaked too early. Last year they started a bit slower and peaked towards the end. That is amazing. Oh, that's funny. Nice job, LJ. All right.
You got some standards, dog.
Dang, man. Talk about hot takes. That's not what we're doing today, but that's crazy. Oh, man. Okay. All right. Next question. From Chow Rule 5. What did the Chargers offense do to negate a good interior D-line like the Titans? Good segue here, Chow Rule. Will this hold up against the Chiefs and maybe a playoff rematch versus the Steelers, Jamie?
I mean, the big thing that they did to run the ball so well against the interior and hold up in pass protection was they had Salyer out there. He played really well. He was giving Bozeman a lot of help on double teams up front in the run game. A lot of their big plays in the middle of the defense, with Gus in particular, were with Salyer and Bozeman moving people off the ball, getting that double team up front. So they were really, really good against that defensive line. And honestly, as much shit as Zion takes, and deservedly so,
Oh yeah.
Zion was, I thought, really good on Sunday. He was matched up one-on-one, it seemed like almost every play with Jeffrey Simmons. And outside of that wonky play with the fumble / forward pass at the end of the first half, you really didn't see Simmons' name called. He didn't really get anywhere near Herbert outside of that one play. He was just, it was one-on-one, man-on-man, and he handled his business. That was about as well as he's played in the last 2 or 3 years.
Do we think that high ankle sprain was hampered? Well, clearly he's an offensive lineman dealing with a high ankle sprain, so it definitely affected him. But do we think we can attribute that to his lackluster performance throughout the year thus far, up until this point?
I mean, give me a couple more games to decide. I'm not going to give a pass yet.
Fair. Okay, cool. So as far as what they did to negate the Titans' defensive line, I think they were pretty sound up front in the run game, first and foremost. So they forced the Titans' interior defensive line to anchor for the majority of the offensive snaps. So they essentially wore them down. Having to hold your ground for nearly 40 snaps, I want to say the Chargers technically had like 39 rushing attempts. As opposed to firing off the ball and getting upfield as a rusher is a very different tax on your body. So Greg Roman also did a better job at getting Herbert on the move as well, attacking the edges of the Titans defense. So just overall, the game plan was pretty much to wear on them and not allow them to be, able to pin their ears back and get upfield after Herbert. Having to hunker down against a running team in that way, it doesn't matter how good your interior defensive linemen are. At some point, they're going to break, or they're going to, essentially have the wind taken from them, and the running game is going to start really getting rolling. But the Chargers rushing game was pretty much effective almost all game long. If we're talking about teams like the Chiefs and the Steelers, they're probably two of the best teams in the league equipped to play that brand of football as well. I think they're both top 5 in run defense. So you might have to maybe take a different approach just a bit. I mean, you shouldn't deviate that far from who you are as an offense, but this can work specifically against teams that have, even if they have really good interior defensive linemen, it's probably the best strategy for the Chargers moving forward against whomever they play. They just had a really good opportunity against the Titans that they executed at a very high level. So yeah, keep it going. But, like I mentioned before, the Chiefs and the Steelers, you're probably going to have a little bit harder time pulling that off just because they're better overall defenses.
Yeah. And to be honest, the Chargers whooped the Titans' ass across the board. They deserve a ton of credit for that. But I think I was going to bring up the same point you are, Craig, that in order to negate the interior, a lot of the rushes by Herbert forced that interior to really maintain that lane integrity. They couldn't get upfield as quickly as they normally do, or as much as they wanted to. And because the interior did good enough for the Chargers, and then when Herbert's a threat to run, everyone's worried about contain rather than, trying to just go after the quarterback. So I think there was a lot of not only just winning up front, but also the threat of Herbert running, and then the fact that the Titans just could not stop the Chargers at any point.
Well, they did a really good blend between JK and Gus, attacking the A and B gaps on the interior with Gus, and then getting those interior guys that have to get on that horse to chase JK on the outside, on the edges and outside zone. So again, it was a really nice blend. But when you have your number 1 and 2 running backs who offer different skill sets to be able to do that, then you're going to create stress on the interior defense regardless, because they can't just expect that with Gus they're just going to consistently get pounded downhill. Then you have to deal with the switch up of a back like JK, who's more of a slasher, and he can still do it on the inside, but he's been super effective on the edges. So overall, I think they just had a solid game plan for this Titans interior defensive line, where they kept them on their heels literally because they were running down their throats, but also you got the big guys having to run up and down the line of scrimmage. So they couldn't just get specifically upfield or just anchor down in the middle. They were moving all game long.
So to get to some of these questions before we get to our Twitter question from the chat, Hannon Derry asks, do you play Pipkins or Salyer this week? Smart or Hurst? Fisk has already won Tomlinson's job. Absolutely.
Thank God.
Who are you guys playing at right guard on Sunday? If you guys were head coach, if you were ball coach, you playing Pipkins or Salyer?
I'm playing Salyer. I'm not thinking twice about it.
Same here.
Agreed.
Okay. Smart or Hurst?
Both.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you have to pick?
I mean,
They
at this
should both be
point,
on the field.
Yeah.
At this point, Smart should definitely get some more burn. I'm not going to say I've seen enough from Hurst. We haven't seen enough from Hurst. So I'm not completely willing to give up on him. But by the same token, we know what hasn't worked with him thus far. So it's time to maybe have that competition thing that we've been talking about and give Smart an opportunity to show what he can do.
From Cristiano 714, how's Derwin playing this year? I know Craig was wondering why PFF was giving him bad grades too this year. How are you guys feeling Derwin's been so far?
We kind of talked about this on After Hours earlier in the week. I feel like the strength of this defense is that everybody's just blending in and doing their job and nobody's having to do too much. And I think maybe Derwin is blending in and kind of fading away in a good way, because he's not making a lot of bad plays. He's not drawing a ton of penalties. He's just doing his job. He's making tackles, making plays. And I think sometimes that gets penalized more than it should by PFF, who, frankly, a lot of times I don't think they know their head from their elbow. But yeah, I just think he's so blended into the defense and everybody's doing their job and not trying to do too much that he's kind of getting lost. And I think he's actually played pretty well.
I'm honestly done with trying to make sense of PFF grades. So whatever with them, but yeah, it's team defense. So as far as standouts are concerned, I would say primarily to me, Deion Henley and Poona Ford have probably been the two guys that have stood out to me most recently the most, but Derwin definitely blends in overall. And I will say that I think he probably has a bigger game this week. He's been lining up a lot in that star position or in that big nickel position when they run out their nickel sets. So I think he'll be a difference maker in getting after Burrow this week. And again, he's not having to do it all. It's similar to Justin Herbert on the offensive side of the ball. They're not asking him to be the end all be all on the defense. You've got guys up in their level of play and they're all communicating very well. So each player is making a play when it's their time. So with that being said, I'm perfectly fine with it. Screw whatever the hell it is PFF is saying.
All right. Let's go on to the Twitter question here. Jamie kind of talked a little bit about it.
Do you see Salyer permanently replacing Pipkins? And this is from Chris Coran.
There you go. Permanently? I would love to see it, but I don't know that it's permanently happening. I mean, I do think that Pipkins is going to start this Sunday. I do think Salyer did enough to make that conversation at least viable, whether you're going to start Pipkins or Salyer. And I also feel like that makes Trey Pipkins' leash a little shorter when you start to look at the future of this line going forward, not only just the season, but past the season. Pipkins has an out this offseason. Salyer's, in his third year of his rookie deal. It feels like, and, maybe we're a prisoner of the moment, but it felt like this offensive line was at his best this week against the Titans. And Salyer was a part of that. And so, if you're getting that much success from Salyer, I would love to see them go again with some Pipkins and some Salyer and let them compete in game, see who wins that role. But I do feel like Salyer's starting to creep in, and I do feel like Pipkins might be looking over his shoulder a little bit if he continues to kind of struggle.
Ironically enough, Salyer has the opportunity right now to overtake that position. And I think if he has a good game, if he's able to get in this week, he might have a stranglehold on that guard position, not just for the rest of the year, but he could parlay this into a starting role going into next season as well.
And how great would that be?
Improve. It would be amazing because, again, that's progression in coaching and helping to develop players. And that's what this team has shown the ability, this coaching staff has shown the ability to do. And then that's one less thing that you need on the interior. Then you're looking for a center. And if Zion, again, can hold up, then maybe your guards aren't as weak as you thought they were. They just needed time. Zion's recovering from an injury, played good last week. If Salyer's improving, then you just need that key piece in the middle at center. And then you're not looking at as much movement in the offseason as you thought maybe 2-3 weeks ago. So it works out perfectly well for me. But I think it's all dependent upon his ability, if he has an opportunity to get back into the game based on how Pipkins performs this week. And if he gets in and it looks anything like last week or continues to get better, then he may have that position locked up.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a couple weeks ago that the Chargers were going to have to go into the next offseason replacing the entire interior of their offensive line. And if Salyer can win a job at right guard and you have a question at left guard and then you got to get a center, that's a lot better than having to replace the entire interior and having to, hope that group meshes next season.
Yeah, I think for the next couple of games anyway, we're probably more than likely looking at some kind of a rotation. I doubt it'll be every series, just because you want some level of continuity on the offensive line.
Yeah.
But maybe you switch them every quarter. Maybe one plays the first half, one plays the second half. Lots of different ways to do it, but I think we'll see some kind of rotation for the next 2 or 3 games, trying to see if Salyer can earn it. One game is a small sample size, so you can't read too much into it based on one game, but he did play well and he does deserve more snaps. And with Pipkins in a position where they can cut him to save money next year, it makes sense to see what you've got and kind of continue to fine tune things as you work your way towards the playoffs.
All right. Before we get into bad tweets, gentlemen, what's your win-loss projection for the next few games? So I'm sure he's talking about the 5 coming up. So against the Bengals, do you think they win or lose? Jamie?
I think they win.
I'll count. Craig?
What are we going through? How many of the games? Sorry.
5. The next 5.
Of the 5, I think they go 3-2.
Oh, you're just going to do that? I was going to go game by game.
Oh, we're going through. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I don't have
Bengals?
the schedule in front of me.
Okay. I'm going to give it to you. Bengals, win or loss?
I'm giving them a W there.
Okay, me too. I think they win this week. Versus the Ravens at home. That's SoFi.
A few weeks going into the season, I would have said loss, but I think they probably win that game.
I think so too. Craig?
That one's rough. I'm gonna say they lose that one.
Okay. Falcons.
I think they win that one.
Yeah, me
Same.
too.
I'm gonna say loss.
Okay. At Kansas City. I got a loss.
God.
I'm gonna say loss.
Okay.
I hate that I'm saying loss, but yeah.
Okay. And then the last one is against the Buccaneers at SoFi.
I think they beat the Bucs.
Okay. Craig?
W, win.
Win. Okay. I think this is the one that gets away from them. And they lose. So we all have them at 3-2.
We all have 3-2. Yeah.
Well, in different orders, but we all got the same 3-2. All right, let's go ahead and get to these bad tweets. And we'll start with the first one here. This one is from, it's anonymous. But this is a person who I kept the date in here so that you know it's current. November 13th. What's the date today? The
15th.
Today's the 15th.
Okay, so 2 days ago, they said, because a lot of people do this during the draft process, make bold statements, but we're talking about after he got benched. Quarterbacks I'd take over Anthony Richardson for the next 10 years. CJ Stroud, Jaden Daniels, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. That's it. That's the list. The Colts have a 22-year-old with the potential to be the best player in the sport. As you know, there's an obvious omission on this list. That is Justin Herbert. So they would take Anthony Richardson for the next 10 years over who got benched again, got benched for Joe Flacco. would not take the Justin Herbert, who's got them as one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now.
Who was the coach that said your potential is going to get me fired? Was that I don't remember who said that. It was a coach told a player that. I don't remember who it was. It was in the NFL. But listen, Anthony Richards, did you not watch him in college? Because in my opinion, he wasn't a first-round draft pick because there wasn't enough on tape. Athletic freak, but he was erratic, spraying the ball all over the field. What you've seen from him so far in the NFL is a really athletic guy who can run, but can't put the ball on anyone accurately. I think the fact that you're omitting Justin Herbert from this is something that you did on purpose. It just falls in line with the Herbert hate thing. But again, I'll keep it short and sweet. I say this all the time. It's one of my mantras. If you can't keep it real, at least keep it realistic. What the hell is this?
I mean, to not have Herbert, and you could even make an argument for Jordan Love being on this list,
Sure.
is pretty absurd. You're talking about a quarterback who was benched a couple weeks ago because he asked for a break during a game because he was tie from running.
Yeah.
So that's a real good example to set for the guy that you think has the potential to be the best player in the league. Let's just further that thought a little bit. He's completing 44% of his passes. 44%. That is not good. That's a very bad number.
You know what that number does? It gets you benched, Jamie.
It does. But apparently not permanently because he's back on the field.
Yeah.
And his QBR is 57. 57. Yeah, he was not a first-round quarterback, in my opinion. This is what happens when you draft a quarterback strictly because he's got a big arm and he can run. Without paying any attention to, as Craig said, the inability to put the ball on anyone, anywhere,
ever,
at any time.
Yeah. Limited starts, by the way, with a limited sample size. You put all your eggs in that basket. And another quarterback off this list, Jalen Hurts.
Yep. I mean,
another one. I'd add. There's probably a bunch. To be honest.
I'm a 47-year-old, 6 foot, 240 pound white guy, and I could complete more passes than Anthony Richardson. So this is bullshit.
What's your 40?
Absurd. Probably
40.
Probably 40.
I wasn't gonna do it. I was staying away from it.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm keeping it real and realistic.
Self-awareness is key.
See? There you go. Jamie's keeping it real and realistic. There you go, Craig. He's absolutely right. But man, this is terrible. This is particularly bad. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is an actual NFL reporter, someone reports on the team. I think I might be wrong on that, but this isn't just some Joe Schmo. Either way, it's a terrible opinion. And it always comes back to Herbert somehow. All right. Next one here. If the Bengals were 6-4, not 4-6, Joe Burrow might very well be the NFL MVP favorite. What? I mean, what do we do?
And if anybody had a penis, should be your grandfather. So that's what I think of that argument.
Yes. If your grandmother had wheels, should be a bike.
Yeah, let's go ahead. We might as well throw all of them out there. If ifs were fifths, we'd all be drunk. What else is that?
I mean, this is ridiculous. What is this? What if? I mean, I don't know what you're doing. What is this argument? I don't understand.
People just get bored. They get bored.
And they
just put stuff on. This is from Twitter, right?
Of course. These are all from Twitter.
Okay,
These are all bad tweets.
Sweet. Oh, yeah. Duh. Yeah, amazing. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about this. We could play this game with a bunch of different players, but also keep in mind what's really funny is you see all these people grandstanding for Joe Burrow, talking about this elite QB season he's having, and its team is letting him down. They don't care anything about the wins. The win stuff goes out of the window when you're talking about Joe Burrow. He's just a fantastic quarterback. And I like Joe Burrow, so I hate this because it sounds like I'm hating on the player. I'm not at all. I just don't like the contradictions here. People will give him every pass in the world, but Have we not experienced this as Chargers fans before?
I know.
And nothing. It's
be
just Herbert isn't good enough. He's not good enough to lift his team to wins. That was the issue. He could throw for all these yards. There were empty stats, but he just wasn't that guy. But apparently, this doesn't apply to Joe Burrow. He's different for some strange reason.
As stupid as this argument is, and it is really fucking stupid, he's also not wrong, because it's Joe Burrow, and if they're 6-4, he's probably in the top 3 in MVP voting or MVP whatever talk,
right?
Just because he's Joe Burrow at 6-4, which is equally ridiculous as this argument. But
yeah, and it feels like the Chargers
Hold on. Patrick Mahomes was in the MVP talks when he had more interceptions than touchdowns. I am over all of this nonsense, actually.
And can we just talk for a second about how Burrow gets all this credit for their Super Bowl run in 2021 when the defense carried that team and he was turning the ball over left and right, but he gets credit for lifting his team to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, but he's got a cool nickname, and he dyes his hair sometimes.
Yeah.
So that'll get him, I guess, a pass. I don't.
And he wears fur coats and smokes cigars.
He throws 360 passes during warm-ups.
Yeah. Cool. It feels like the Chargers are maybe the biggest what-if organization in the NFL. All the things, I mean, chargering has become a term among NFL circles. Like all this what-if talk for Joe Burrow, it's like the Chargers have been what-if like almost their entire history of their organization. But as Squeezy says, if the Chiefs were 0-7 and not 7-0, they'd be the worst team in the league. And I can't, as Daniel Popper says, can confirm they'd be the worst team in the league.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yep. All right, last one here. This is from a Raiders fan. And this was from this weekend.
They're still talking.
Right. And by the way, same person. He quote tweeted his own tweet. The first one was Raiders are only 2 games out of the playoff spot, and they play most of the teams in their way. Most of the teams that are in their way, LOL, #Raider Nation. Quote tweets, Raiders about to go on a run these last 8 games and make playoffs or some crazy stuff, LOL, Raider Nation.
It's okay. You can say shit because that's what these takes are, is shit.
No, I mean, you're crazy stuff, buddy. I don't curse, so I can't say it. You're crazy stuff, pal. That's who's crazy stuff here.
I mean, who still has faith in this Raiders organization?
I mean, they're in such bad shape that their head coach canceled practices during their bye week.
Yeah.
Did you hear the rumor that he changed their team schedule? Pierce did, from morning practices to afternoon practices because, quote, he's not a morning person. Did you hear that?
No, I did not.
I don't even think that's a rumor. I think that was reported by one of the NFL beat writers this week.
I love this. I love this stupid mentality. I love this blind faith. Raiders have it every year. They quote rings for things that they weren't even alive long enough to experience. But this having faith in a Tom Telesco, Antonio Pierce team, which
doesn't even sound real.
I know. With North Turner. I know we got to get out of here, Jamie, but if you just want to give a little word to Antonio Pierce as we head off here, because I know he's got a special place in your heart.
Oh, hold on. I wish I brought my popcorn. This is
Fuck Jamie. You, Antonio Pierce. You can go straight to hell. Fuck that guy. I'm enjoying every second of his misery right now. Every second. Fuck him.
And that's how we'll end this TLR Roundtable. Thank you. Oh, not only just a Raider hater, but also a lot of hate from his ASU days from Jamie Hoyle. Thank you guys for joining us. That was awesome. I appreciate you guys coming in on a Friday night. We are all good. We will see you after the game Sunday night, I'm sure. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.
Oh, man, you're lagging.